No one in the Colorado Valley spoke the name. Manurva Hartwell, without lowering their voice. Not out of respect, but because that name carried something people preferred not to face. They said she was dry on the inside, that the land of the ranch had learned from her body how not to bear fruit, and that God, in his strange justice, had closed her womb the same way he had closed the smile on her face. That morning, the wind blew stronger than usual, lifting dust between the crooked fences of the Hartwell ranch. Manurva stood still on the porch, dressed in black, not for recent mourning but out of habit. It had been years since she had buried more things than people. Her father, her mother, her future. A barren, someone murmured behind her, thinking the wind would swallow the word. But Manurva heard it. She always did. She didn't answer. She never did. She had learned early that some words don't hurt the skin. They corrode the bone. At 28, she owned a broken ranch, a stained reputation, and a past no one wanted to remember, except when it was convenient to use it against her. That afternoon, an unfamiliar horse appeared on the dirt road. At first, just a silhouette, then a man. Manurva felt something tighten in her chest. An old discomfort forgotten, almost childish. The way he rode, the worn hat, the coat too thin for that cold. The horse stopped in front of the ranch. The man dismounted slowly. And then, before he even spoke her name, Manurva knew. He was the poor boy her family had driven away years ago. The boy who slept in the barn. The only one who had never looked at her with pity. He lifted his face. His eyes met hers, and there was no judgment there. No pity, no contempt, only recognition. Manurva, he said, his voice steady, as if that name had never been a burden. In that moment, she didn't know. But the wind knew, the land knew. The past had returned to collect its debt, and to change everything. The silence between them lasted longer than it should have. It wasn't awkwardness. It was too much memory trying to return all at once. Manurva was the first to look away. "What do you want here?" she asked, her voice hard, as if every syllable were a plank nailed shut to keep the past from coming in. The man removed his hat. A simple gesture. Old, respectful. "A work," he replied. "And maybe a reckoning." She laughed without humor. There's no work here, and no reckonings. Just tired land and badly told stories." He didn't argue. He only observed the ranch, the fallen fences, the leaning barn, the big house that had once been a symbol of pride and now breathed abandonment. "The land didn't die," he said. "It was just left alone for too long." The sentence hit Manurva like a slow punch, because no one spoke to her like that. They spoke about her, never to her. "The people say you can't," he began, then stopped. "Say it," she cut in. I'm used to it." He took a deep breath. "They say you can't carry anything forward. Not the land, not a name." Manurva felt her face burn, not with anger, with old shame. "Then why did you come back?" She asked. "To confirm what everyone already thinks?" He lifted his eyes, and there was something dangerous there. Certainty. "I came back because I never believed that." She swallowed hard. The wind passed between them, carrying the smell of old wood and buried memories. Manurva remembered the boy who shared stale bread with her in the barn. The boy who took beatings in silence. The only one who never repeated what the adults said. "You should leave," she said more softly, "before this place swallows you like it swallowed everyone else." He put his hat back on. "I already left once," he replied, "and I spent years trying to forget what I left here." He took a step forward. I couldn't. In that instant, Manurva felt something dangerous being born. Not hope. Hope was too cruel. It was something else. Something that started small, but could destroy everything she had built just to survive. And she knew, if she let that man stay, nothing else would remain intact. Manurva didn't sleep that night. The wind hit the windows as if it wanted to force its way in, and every creak of the house seemed to repeat things she had spent her whole life trying to forget. The man was there, in the old guest room, alive, present, too real. She got up before the sun, put on her coat and went out to the corral. She needed to work. Whenever the past threatened to rise in her throat, she hid in labor. It was there that she found him. He was fixing a broken fence with steady hands, precise movements, as if he had never left, as if that place still belonged to him somehow. "I didn't ask for help," she said. "The fence fell," he replied. "And when something falls, someone has to lift it." She stopped. "You always talk as if you're fixing people." He looked at her, serious. Some were never broken, just hurt. Manurva felt the air leave her lungs, because no one had ever separated those two things. You don't know what they say about me," she said finally. "What this valley decided I am." "I know," he replied. "I heard yesterday in town." She closed her eyes, waited for the blow. It didn't come. "They said you were punished, that God shut you inside." The words came dry. No venom, no judgment. Manurva laughed, a short, cracked laugh. "They love that story. Makes them sleep better at night." "And you?" He asked. "Do you sleep better believing it?" She didn't answer, because there were nights she did believe it. There were mornings she hated her own body. There were days she felt she carried an invisible flaw, something everyone saw, even when they said nothing. "They were wrong back then," he said quietly, "when they cast me out, when they pointed at you, when they decided who you would be." She opened her eyes. "They're never wrong," she replied. "They only choose who pays." He took a step closer. "I didn't come back to save you, Manurva." She lifted her face, surprised. "I came back because there's still something here that they tried to kill and failed." The sun finally broke the horizon, bathing the ranch in a harsh, raw, honest light, and Manurva understood, with a tightness in her chest. The past hadn't come to be remembered. It had come to be faced. The town noticed before Manurva was ready to admit it. The stairs began too early, too long, as if something had changed, not on the ranch, but in her, in the way she walked, in the lighter silence, in the man who was now there staying. At the store, conversations stopped when they walked in together. "So it's true," someone murmured. The nobody's son is back." Manurva pretended not to hear, but she felt her body react, not with shame, with alertness. On the way back, the sky closed in fast. Heavy clouds, harsh wind. The storm fell before they reached the ranch. The old house creaked as they entered, soaked from the rain, surrounded by the noise of the world outside. For a moment they said nothing, just breathed, as if silence were an agreement. "They will talk," Manurva said finally. "They always do when they think someone dared to be happy by mistake." He moved closer slowly, didn't touch. "And you?" He asked. "What do you think?" She took her time. "I think I've spent my whole life surviving, and I don't know what to do when someone stays." The storm grew stronger. The wind slammed against the windows. The house felt smaller, more intimate. "You don't have to face anything alone," he said low. "Not tonight." Manurva felt the weight of those words, not as a promise, as presence. She couldn't remember the last time she had let her guard down, not out of desire, out of exhaustion, out of trust. When the lamp went out, there was no hurry, no guilt, just two bodies finding shelter in the same silence. That night the valley watched in silence, and for the first time Manurva didn't feel wrong for wanting to stay. The morning arrived differently, not lighter, but irreversible. Manurva woke before him, sitting on the edge of the bed, listening to the house breathe. The storm had passed, but it had left its marks on the muddy ground, on the windows, and on her. There was no regret. There was awareness. She rose slowly, put on her coat, and went to the kitchen. The smell of coffee soon spread through the air, trying to restore a sense of normality to a world that was no longer the same. When he appeared in the doorway, there was no awkwardness, only a silent understanding, the kind that asks for no explanation. "The town will notice," she said, pouring 2 cups. "They always notice what they can't control," he replied. Manurva rested her hands on the table. "I didn't do this out of loneliness," she said, steady. "I did it because I trusted, and trust was never something they allowed me." He nodded. "I know." The silence returned, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with unspoken things, with boundaries that needed to be respected. "This doesn't change who I am to them," she went on. "Nor does it erase what they say about me. But it changes who you are to yourself. he answered. The words lingered. Later, alone in the corral, Manurva noticed something subtle, a strange tiredness, a warmth too gentle to be a fever. She ignored it. She had learned to ignore her own body years ago. But that day, ignoring it felt harder. The valley kept watching. The looks grew heavier. Conversations lowered when she passed. Now it wasn't just judgment, it was suspicion. They'll use this, she said that night. They'll say I've lost the right to speak. He stepped closer. You never needed their permission. Manurva took a deep breath, because, for the first time, she didn't feel like she had crossed a forbidden line. She felt she had crossed an imposed one, and that frightened her more than any insult. That night, lying alone, her hand rested on her belly without conscious intent, and a thought, small, almost forbidden, crossed her mind. What if life had found a way, precisely when they said there was none? The morning arrived differently, not lighter, but irreversible. Manurva woke before him, sitting on the edge of the bed, listening to the house breathe. The storm had passed, but it had left its marks on the muddy ground, on the windows, and on her. There was no regret. There was awareness. She rose slowly, put on her coat, and went to the kitchen. The smell of coffee soon spread through the air, trying to restore a sense of normality to a world that was no longer the same. When he appeared in the doorway, there was no awkwardness, only a silent understanding, the kind that asks for no explanation. The town will notice, she said, pouring 2 cups. They always notice what they can't control, he replied. Manurva rested her hands on the table. I didn't do this out of loneliness, she said, steady. I did it because I trusted, and trust was never something they allowed me. He nodded. I know. The silence returned, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with unspoken things, with boundaries that needed to be respected. This doesn't change who I am to them, she went on, nor does it erase what they say about me. But it changes who you are to yourself, he answered. The words lingered. Later, alone in the corral, Manurva noticed something subtle, a strange tiredness, a warmth too gentle to be a fever. She ignored it. She had learned to ignore her own body years ago. But that day, ignoring it felt harder. The valley kept watching. The looks grew heavier. Conversations lowered when she passed. Now it wasn't just judgment, it was suspicion. They'll use this, she said that night. They'll say I've lost the right to speak. He stepped closer. You never needed their permission. Manurva took a deep breath, because, for the first time, she didn't feel like she had crossed a forbidden line. She felt she had crossed an imposed one, and that frightened her more than any insult. That night, lying alone, her hand rested on her belly without conscious intent, and a thought, small, almost forbidden, crossed her mind. What if life had found a way, precisely when they said there was none? The visit came in the middle of the afternoon. Manurva was on the porch when the horse stopped in front of the house. The man did not dismount immediately. He stayed there, high in the saddle, like someone who needs to feel taller to say what he came to say. They're talking about you, he said without beating around the bush. They always have, she replied. He cast a slow glance toward the barn, where the other man was working. This time it's different. Manurva kept her stance firm. Say it. The man clenched his jaw. They say you've lost your mind, that you've brought trouble into the ranch, that you let yourself be confused by someone who doesn't belong in this valley. And since when does the valley decide who I can stay with? He leaned a little in the saddle. Since it started to stain what's left of your name. The word name fell heavy. Listen carefully, he continued. This man is not welcome. He was a mistake once. No need to repeat it. Manurva felt her stomach twist, not from fear, but from clarity. The mistake was driving him away. She said, the mistake was believing I had to pay for decisions I never made. The man frowned. You're changing, Manurva, and changes usually end badly around here. She took a step forward. No, what ends badly is when people realize they've lost control. Silence stretched. Think carefully, he said finally, before the town decides to act. He turned his horse and left, leaving dust and threat in the air. Manurva stood still for a long moment. Then she walked to the barn. They came here, she said to him. They spoke about you. He did not look surprised. I figured as much. They said you don't belong in this place. He stepped closer. And you? Do you believe that? She took a deep breath. I think they're afraid of what happens when I choose for myself. He nodded. Then now it's not just about you. Manurva closed her eyes for a second, because she finally understood. When a woman challenges an old lie, the valley doesn't just try to silence her, it tries to isolate her. And this time, she decided not to step back. Manurva didn't sleep that night. The man's words echoed through the empty house, like footsteps that never fade. Think carefully, before the town decides to act. It wasn't a warning, it was an ultimatum. At dawn, she was already up. She dressed without hurry, but with determination. She saddled the horse and rode toward the town before anyone could see her leave. If she was going to face what they were trying to use against her, she wouldn't be unarmed. The office still smelled of old wood, and decisions made too quickly. The doctor looked up when she entered, and paled. Manurva Hartwell, he said. I didn't expect you. Nor I, all the lies, she replied. She closed the door behind her. I want to see all my records, not summaries, not conclusions, everything. He hesitated. That's not necessary. It is, she cut in, because they're using my story, and the man with me, as a threat. Silence betrayed him. The doctor opened the drawer with trembling hands. The papers were far too few to justify a life sentence. Inconclusive diagnoses, interrupted tests, no real certainty. Manurva ran her fingers over the pages. You never had proof, she said low. You just let them decide for me. The town? They pressured, he murmured. Your father? Everyone wanted an answer. So you gave a convenient one, she answered. Not a true one. She left, her chest burning. On the way back, the valley seemed smaller, not less cruel, just more fragile. Like something that stands only as long as no one dares touch it. When she reached the ranch, he was waiting. They didn't like that you went to town, he said. I know. She took a deep breath. They lied. They never knew, and now they're afraid. Because if I'm right, nothing they did holds up. He looked at her, serious. That puts you in danger. No, she replied. It sets me free. The wind swept fiercely between them, as if the valley itself was listening. Because now Manurva knew it wasn't just her reputation at stake. It was the whole lie that kept this place standing. And old lies don't fall without trying to destroy those who face them. They didn't wait for her to speak out loud. The next morning, Manurva found the ranch gate on the ground. The wood had been broken with too much force to be carelessness. The fences were open, the barn violated. Nothing had been taken. It wasn't theft. It was a message. She stood there for a long moment, feeling the cold creep up from her feet. This was the valley, responding to the truth before she even had a chance to speak it. They know, he said, seeing the destruction. They know that I know, she replied. In town, the whispers became something worse. No longer secret murmurs, but open accusations, thrown like stones. She's lost her mind. She's being manipulated. She was always unstable. She brought a stranger into the ranch, and now wants to blame everyone. His name was now used as proof against her. They said that man had confused her, led her astray, provoked questions too dangerous for someone like her. In front of the church they gathered, as if seeking justice, yet carrying fear. Do you want to turn the valley against you? One of the men asked. Do you want to destroy everything? Manurva took a deep breath. I'm not destroying anything, she said. I just stopped supporting a lie that was never mine. The doctor was there, the saloon man too. Eyes down, jaws tight. The records weren't conclusive, she continued. You chose to believe what was easiest, and left me to carry the weight. This is against the law, someone shouted. No, she replied. This is against cowardice. Silence fell, heavy. Later, back at the ranch, Manurva's body gave out, a wave of nausea, a dizziness that forced her to sit. She brought her hand to her belly, her heart racing. This time, she didn't try to ignore it. There was no shame. There was no guilt. There was only the unsettling certainty that something was happening, something the valley would never allow. If it could choose, he knelt before her. Whatever it is, don't face it alone. Minerva closed her eyes, because now she understood. The valley wasn't reacting because of the past, but out of fear of the future she carried. And when the truth begins to take root, those who live by lies always try to tear it out by force. The valley awoke in silence, not the calm silence of ordinary mornings, but a heavy one, as if the whole earth was waiting for something to happen. Mist covered the fields, and the wind blew low without courage to stir the dust. Minerva stepped out of her house slowly. Each step hurt, not in her body, but in her memory. That ground had called her unworthy. That sky had heard her cry alone. And yet, it was there she stood. The town gathered once again, not out of courage, but out of habit. She carried no documents, no proof in her hands. She carried only the truth she held in her chest and in her womb. "You decided my life without ever being sure," she said, her voice steady. "You called me sterile because it was easier than admitting you were wrong." The doctor lowered his head. "I was wrong," he admitted. "There was never any confirmation." The murmur turned into shock. "You broke me," Minerva continued, "but you could not erase me." She took a deep breath. "And now, this truth grows, whether you like it or not." Some averted their gaze. Others cried in silence, because in that moment they understood. It was not the scandal that scared them. It was the miracle they had tried to deny. He approached her, not as a savior, but as someone who chose to stay. "The valley may not change today," he said, "but you have already changed everything." Minerva held his hand. "I don't need them to accept me," she replied. "I only needed to know I was not a lie." The wind blew stronger, as if carrying away years of cruel words. Months later, the ranch was alive again. Fences rebuilt, fertile land, timid laughter rising where there was once only echo. Minerva watched the horizon when she felt a gentle movement within her. She smiled, for the first time without fear. She was not what they said. She never was. She was what survived, what endured, what was born from the ashes. And in the wild heart of Colorado, where the wind still holds secrets, a new story began. Not written by judgment, but by truth, by love, and by the courage to exist.